Gigi here, and this is Let's Build. If this is your first time, I build a LEGO set timed to different media and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the LEGO Dungeons & Dragons Red Dragon's Tale versus Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. All footage I'm using is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. I apologize in advance for pronouncing names or places incorrectly. Also, you'll have to forgive my voice. This is week 2 with braces. Spoilers ahead. You've been warned. Specifications of the LEGO set. Be transported to the Forgotten Realms with this LEGO's Ideas Dungeons & Dragons Red Dragon's Tale set for play and display. A nostalgic D&D fantasy gift for creative adults, it features a buildable tavern with removable roof and an upper level for easy access, a dungeon and a tower, plus a posable Cinderhowl the Red Dragon figure that can be wrapped around the tower. The set also includes 6 LEGO minifigures, elf wizard, a dwarf cleric, a gnome fighter, a orc rogue, an innkeeper, and a dragonborn, plus lots of monster figures, including a beholder, an owlbear, and a displacer beast. Each minifigure, apart from Alax Jadescales, has an alternate head so you can choose your own look. This building set for adults has been created in collaboration with Wizards of the Coast and includes a custom campaign written by the D&D game team. Download the campaign to begin your quest. There are magical items and iconic Easter eggs to be discovered everywhere, but beware of traps, monsters, and that huge red dragon. D&D gift idea for adults. Create your own brick-built Dungeons & Dragons Red Dragon's Tale fantasy adventure with the first ever LEGO model set in the Forgotten Realms. Nostalgic gift idea. Treat yourself or give this LEGO Ideas set as a birthday gift to creative adults who share your passion for Dungeons & Dragons adventures. Build together. Includes 4 booklets with building instructions for different parts of the set, so you can build with your D&D group, plus interviews with the set's fan designer and more. The LEGO Fan's Choice. This collectible LEGO set for adults is one of a diverse range of LEGO Ideas sets, each created by a fan designer, voted for by LEGO fans and produced by the LEGO Group. Fun D&D room decor for the home. The tower, tavern, and dungeon build in this 3,745-piece building kit for adults measures over 19 inches high, 14.5 inches wide, and 12 inches deep. Exclusive Dungeons & Dragons adventure. In 1974, with the roll of a die, a groundbreaking new role-playing game opened the portal to an immersive fantasy world unlike any other game before. The lure of endless adventures beckoned players to explore with their imagination, create their own stories, games, characters, and rules in the real world, and form alliances and friendships with new species as they battle monsters in strange realms in the game world. Dungeons & Dragons invited players of all ages to embrace their inner adventurer, warrior, or imaginary creature. In this spirit of creativity and collaboration, Wizards of the Coast has developed a thrilling adventure that takes place in this LEGO Ideas model. 50 years of Dungeons & Dragons. 50 years on, the game is still afoot, and these intricately detailed realms have grown to include millions of players in loyal communities around the world. A tribute for players by players. In the fall of 2022, we launched a challenge on Ideas, Lego.com, and invited fans to recreate their favorite D&D storylines, monsters, characters, heroes, or locations, using LEGO bricks, elements, and accessories. After a fierce fan vote, this model was selected as the winner to represent the fans' tribute to 50 years of Dungeons & Dragons. Partnering with the game developer Wizards of the Coast, we are proud to share with you a bespoke adventure module specifically tailored to this LEGO Dungeons & Dragons set. Available on LEGO.com through the LEGO Insiders program, Dungeons & Dragons, A Red Dragon's Tale takes you on an epic journey full of monsters, magic, and merriment, blending the creativity of both worlds to offer a truly unique LEGO Dungeons & Dragons experience. We hope you will enjoy the creative storytelling as you build and play through the exclusive adventure with your party. Be inspired to display your passion for LEGO building and D&D and create your own adventures with the set and its characters. Monica Pedersen, Marketing Director, LEGO Ideas. Meet the model design winner. Lucas Bolt, Ideas LEGO name Bolt's Builds, lives in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and is no stranger to games. He studied game development and now creates 3D environments for video games. This challenge matched my love of LEGO building, classic fantasy, castle architecture, and games. The story is based on typical aspects of a Dungeons & Dragons adventure, a dungeon full of challenges and loot, a roaring dragon to defend it, and a tavern where these stories are told by the adventurers who lived through them. It's also a layout for challenges that could unfold in multiple ways, with some of my favorite creatures from the D&D Monster Manual. The dragon in the original submission was done as an homage to the classic Legoland Dragon and the LEGO Castle Dragon Knights theme from 1993. Seeing how the LEGO Ideas designers helped the idea evolve was super rewarding, and it shows how much work really goes into developing a set. To get a look inside the LEGO kitchen has been a wonderful opportunity that I am very grateful for, and it's all thanks to the fans who helped this set become a reality. Thank you all, and may all your quests be successful. Meet the Building Instructions cover design winner. Yu Chung-tae from Taiwan is a creative director at an advertising agency and a talented illustrator. His beautiful artwork won the contest to be featured on the cover of this booklet. I thoroughly relish the creative process, brainstorming and experimenting with various possibilities. I often keep an eye on contests on the LEGO Ideas platform, where astonishing creations truly captivate me. I spent a considerable amount of time researching various D&D artwork to decide on a theme and decided to adapt a relief-like form. Given the nature of this style, I had to balance between avoiding excessive realism and maintaining a clean and concise appearance. I also needed to create an overall sense of antiquity and weathered texture, which wasn't my strong suit. Additionally, recreating the well-known antagonist character posed a difficulty as it required staying faithful to the original design. I hope fans will enjoy the result as well as the model. Gather your party and venture forth. It's late when you arrive at the half-empty tavern. The heat from the fireplace soothes your aching bones. A group of your fellow travelers is already seated at the corner table. You're the one they have been waiting for. This is it. Your adventure is about to begin. To understand why Dungeons & Dragons has become the global phenomenon it is today, let's start at the beginning. Playing games together as a family, a group of friends, or in tournaments has been part of every known culture for thousands of years. Even now, with millions of digital games available, a fun game night is still a welcome chance to immerse ourselves in a playful activity and connect with each other. But when game developers Gary Gygax and David Arneson released their first versions of Dungeons & Dragons in 1974, they entered uncharted territory in the tabletop games category. Roll for initiative. The original D&D system was inspired by the epic scope of fantasy literature and the detailed miniatures of tabletop wargames. These passions were combined to make revolutionary tabletop role-playing game, TTRPG, where players imagine themselves as adventurers questing through fantastical lands. As their characters met challenges, such as monsters or dungeons, they consulted rules and rolled dice to determine the outcome of their actions. Dice added unpredictability to the story, meaning that no two D&D games could ever be the same. Throughout every iteration over its 50-year history, D&D's spirit of collaboration and creativity has remained at the core. There are no winners or losers, just players telling an epic story together. The possibilities remain endless. Meet your monsters. Some of the most iconic denizens in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons are the monsters. From the minuscule to the magnificent, they take skill, cunning, and collaboration to beat. Meet some of the monsters you will encounter in your LEGO Ideas D&D adventure, and be inspired to expand with more. Skeleton. A solid staple in any D&D campaign, the skeleton may seem simple at first glance, with its limited capacity for independent thought or battle skills. But with a creative dungeon master, there is no limit to the fun you can have with these spindly creatures. Gelatinous cube. Usually found filling corridors or blocking any escape from dungeons, these slow-moving, mindless, amoeba-like beings are completely transparent and difficult to spot. A reflection of light on its surface may give away its position. They can absorb and dissolve most organic matter that gets in their way. Owlbear. Living up to its name in terms of both looks and behavior, the owlbear is one of the most feared predators of the wilderness. With senses as sharp as its talons, and a heightened sense of smell, this unnatural creature is a volatile fighter who likes to hunt its prey for sport. Beholder. Feeling watched. Feared by many adventurers for its unpredictability and power, this floating, spherical creature emits different magical rays from each of its eye stalks to inflict perilous harm on its enemies. The beholder is highly intelligent, ruthless, and a fierce opponent, and a true test of a party's mettle. Displacer beast. This six-legged, tentacled, feline-like beast sometimes hunts in packs, but is just as often seen on its own, attacking lone travelers. A displacer beast can bend light to appear to be several feet away from its actual location, allowing it to take enemies by surprise. It is a popular guardian among wizards and others who use magic. Mimic. While some mimics are more intelligent than others, they are tough, complex creatures. A fun favorite among dungeon masters, the mimic's natural shapes can vary, often resembling a treasure chest of wood or a rock, and they can flawlessly take on any appearance to suit their needs, maybe even a bed. Cinderhowl the Red Dragon. Dragons are powerful spellcasters and more intelligent than any human. A frightful presence, this almighty foe is one of the most daunting monsters you will encounter. Just a beat of its wing can cause calamitous damage, not to mention its claws, bite, and devastating fire spewing. Defeating Cinderhowl the Red Dragon requires a group of highly trained adventurers. Good luck. Chapters from the first 50 years. 1974, Dungeons and Dragons by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. From its early predecessor to modern editions, the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook provides everything players need to create and navigate intriguing campaigns and role-playing adventures. After the quite complex and equation-heavy rules in the early editions, later updates became more refined and welcoming to new players. 1983, Dungeons and Dragons Set 1, Basic Rules. This iconic rule set included a simpler, clearer version of the rules and story universe to ease the new players. Even today, it remains a popular introduction to the game that new players can study to familiarize themselves with D&D lore. 1989, Player's Handbook, 2nd edition. The 2nd edition saw the rise of new, iconic settings including the Forgotten Realms, Planescape, Dark Sun, and Spelljammer. The Monster Manual was relaunched as the Monstrous Compendium. 2000, Player's Handbook, 3rd edition. The 1st edition, produced under new owners, the Wizards of the Coast, featured more details of the universe, mechanics, and rules. The introduction of the 20-sided dice, D20 system, added more depth and story arcs to the gaming experience. It was later revised, based on player feedback, and released as version 3.5. This version still remains popular among fans. 2008, Player's Handbook, 4th edition. The 4th edition took the game through significant gameplay changes, with new combat mechanics, spell changes, and skill challenges. It was the first edition to integrate a digital subscription, and although not every change was welcomed by fans, the ground was paved for the immensely popular 5th edition. 2014, Player's Handbook, 5th edition. This edition helped enable a massive surge of the game's popularity, with updated mechanics that streamlined play, including modified skills, spells, feats, and the advantage to disadvantage feature. The power system reverted to a more traditional one, with class features gained on character level. Meet your heroes. Choose your character and your party wisely, and your riveting adventure can begin. Dwarf Cleric. A cleric channels divine magic from the god they serve. They are powerful healers who can help their party survive any encounter. In battle, clerics wield a holy symbol and a weapon that shines with radiant light. Gnome Fighter. Practice makes perfect when you're a fighter. These warriors train with a variety of weapons and armor to become masters of combat. They learn to think clearly in battle and to push themselves beyond normal limits to keep their allies safe. Orc Rogue. Rogues are masters of stealth who can attack from the shadows or sneak past without a sound. Their clever minds and quick fingers are adept for picking locks and disarming traps. If a rogue is watching, you won't know until it's too late. Elf Wizard. Wizards study books and scrolls to learn art of magic. They copy spells into their most precious possession. Each wizard specializes in a school of magic, such as illusion, necromancy, or enchantment. From niche to global phenomenon. Since the 1970s, the game has spawned tournaments and live-action role-playing events in local and global communities, and the Dungeons & Dragons universe has expanded into novels, video games, a TV show, and movies. While D&D was briefly targeted by the moral panics of the 1980s, research has proven that the game can be a successful therapeutic tool for both adults and children, from advancing social skills and empathy to improving creative thinking, language, and problem-solving skills. Many schools around the world even facilitate D&D clubs as their after-school activity. Expanding the gaming experience. D&D has inspired pop culture, a myriad of books, a new franchise of games, both tabletop and digital. Since the early 2000s, the evolution of the game by Wizards of the Coast has cemented the legacy of D&D as a global phenomenon. Online tools such as D&D Beyond, podcasts, streaming, and social media have helped spread the game's reach with a strong, collaborative, creative community and accessible entry points for new players. Whether you are new to this incredible world or already an experienced player, we hope this set will inspire endless new ideas for how you can expand the gaming experience. Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game originally created and designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. The game was first published in 1974 by Tactical Studies Rules. It has been published by Wizards of the Coast, later a subsidiary of Hasbro, since 1997. The game was derived from miniature wargames, with a variation of the 1971 game Chainmail serving as the initial rule system. D&D's publication is commonly recognized as the beginning of modern role-playing games and the role-playing game industry, which also deeply influenced video games, especially the role-playing video game genre. D&D departs from traditional wargaming by allowing each player to create their own character to play instead of a military formation. These characters embark on adventures within a fantasy setting. A dungeon master, or DM, serves as a referee and storyteller for the game, while maintaining the setting in which the adventures occur and playing the role of the inhabitants of the game world, known as non-player characters, or NPCs. The characters form a party and they interact with the setting's inhabitants and each other. Together they solve problems, engage in battles, explore, and gather treasure and knowledge. In the process, player characters earn experience points to level up and become increasingly powerful over a series of separate gaming sessions. Players choose a class when they create their character, which gives them special perks and abilities every few levels. The early success of D&D led to a proliferation of similar game systems. Despite the competition, D&D has remained the market leader in the role-playing game industry. In 1977, the game was split into two branches: the relatively rules-light game system of basic Dungeons & Dragons, and the more structured, rules-heavy game system of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, abbreviated as AD&D. AD&D 2nd Edition was published in 1989. In 2000, a new system was released as D&D 3rd Edition, continuing the edition numbering from AD&D. A revised version 3.5 was released in June of 2003. These 3rd edition rules formed the basis of the D20 system, which is available under the Open Games license for use by other publishers. D&D 4th edition was released June 2008. The 5th edition of D&D, the most recent, was released during the second half of 2014. In 2004, D&D remained the best-known, best-selling role-playing game in the US, with an estimated 20 million people having played the game and more than $1 billion in book and equipment sales worldwide. The year 2017 had the most number of players in its history, 12 million to 15 million in North America alone. D&D 5th edition sales were up 41% in 2017 from the year before, and soared another 52% in 2018, the game's biggest sales year yet. The game has been supplemented by many pre-made adventures, as well as commercial campaign settings suitable for use by regular gaming groups. D&D is known beyond the game itself for other D&D branded products, references in popular culture, and some of the controversies that have surrounded it, particularly a moral panic in the 1980s known as the Satanic Panic that attempted to associate it with Satanism and suicide. The game has won multiple awards and has since been translated into many languages. Play overview. Dungeons & Dragons is a structured yet open-ended role-playing game. Typically, one player takes on the role of the Dungeon Master, or DM, or Game Master, GM, while the others each control a single character representing an individual in a fictional setting. When working together as a group, The player characters are often described as a party of adventurers, with each member often having their own area of specialty that contributes to the success of the group as a whole. During the course of play, each player directs the actions of their character and their interactions with the other characters in the game. This activity is performed through the verbal impersonation of the characters by the players, while employing a variety of social and other useful cognitive skills such as logic, basic mathematics, and imagination. A game often continues over a series of meetings to complete a single adventure, and longer into a series of related gaming adventures called a campaign. The result of the party's choices and overall storyline for the game are determined by the DM, according to the rules of the game and the DM's interpretation of those rules. The DM selects and describes the various non-player characters, or NPCs, that the party can encounter, the settings in which these interactions occur, and the outcomes of those interactions based on the player's choices and actions. Encounters often take the form of battles with monsters, a generic term used in D&D to describe potentially hostile beings such as animals, aberrant beings, or mythical creatures. In addition to jewels and gold coins, magical items form the part of treasure that the players often seek in a dungeon. Magic items are generally found in treasure hoards or recovered from fallen opponents. Sometimes a powerful or important magical item is the object of a quest. The game's extensive rules, which cover diverse subjects such as social interactions, magic use, combat, and the effect of environment on the player characters, help the DM make these decisions. The DM may choose to deviate from the published rules or make up new rules if they feel it is necessary. The most recent version of the game's rules are detailed in 3 5th edition core rulebooks: the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. The only items required to play the game are the rulebooks, a character sheet for each player, and a number of polyhedral dice. Many players also use miniature figures on a grid map as a visual aid if desired, particularly during combat. Some editions of the game presumed such usage. Many optional accessories are available to enhance the game, such as expansion rulebooks, pre-designed adventures, and various campaign settings. Game mechanics. Before the game begins, each player creates their player character and records the details on a character sheet. First, a player determines their character's ability scores, which consist of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Each edition of the game has offered different methods of determining these scores. The player then chooses a species, such as a dwarf, elf, or human, called a race. A character class, such as a fighter, rogue, or wizard, an alignment, a moral, ethical outlook, and other features to round out the character's ability and back history, which have varied in nature through differing editions. During the game, players describe their PC's intended actions to the DM, who then describes the result or response. Trivial actions such as picking up a letter or opening an unlocked door are usually automatically successful. The outcomes of more complex or risky actions, such as scaling a cliff or picking a lock, are determined by rolling of dice. Different polyhedral dice are used for different actions. For example, a 20-sided die is used to determine whether a hit is made in combat, with other dice such as a 4, 6, 8, or 10, or even 12-sided die used to determine how much damage was dealt. Factors contributing to the outcome include the character's ability scores, skills, and the difficulty of the task. In circumstances where a character is attempting to avoid a negative outcome, such as when dodging a trap or resisting the effect of a spell, A saving throw can be used to determine whether the resulting effect is reduced or avoided. In this case, the odds of success are influenced by the character's class, levels, and ability scores. In circumstances where a character is attempting to complete a task, such as picking a lock, deactivating a trap, or pushing a boulder, a difficulty class must be hit or exceeded. Relevant ability bonuses are added to help players succeed. As the game is played, each PC changes over time and gradually increases in capability. Characters gain, or sometimes lose, experience, skills, and wealth, and may even alter their alignment or gain additional character classes, which is called multi-classing. The key way characters progress is by earning experience points, or XP, which happens when they defeat an enemy or accomplish a difficult task. Acquiring enough XP allows a PC to advance a level, which grants the character improved class features, abilities, and skills. XP can be lost in some circumstances, such as encounters with creatures that drain life energy, or by use of certain magical powers that come with an XP cost. Hit points, or HP, are a measure of a character's vitality and health, and are determined by the class, level, and constitution of a character. They can be temporarily lost when a character sustains wounds in combat or otherwise comes to harm, and loss of HP is the most common way for a character to die in-game. Death can also result in the loss of key ability scores or character levels. When a PC dies, it is often possible for the dead character to be resurrected through magic, although some penalties may be imposed as a result. If resurrection is not possible or desired, the player may instead create a new PC to resume playing the game. Adventures and campaigns. A typical Dungeons & Dragons game consists of an adventure, which is roughly equivalent to a single story or quest. The DM can either design an original adventure or follow one of the many pre-made adventures, also known as modules, that have been published throughout the history of Dungeons & Dragons. Published adventures typically include a background story, illustrations, maps, and goals for players to achieve. Some may include location descriptions and handouts, although they are not required for gameplay. Although a small adventure entitled Temple of the Frog was included in the Blackmore Rules supplement in 1975, the first standalone D&D module published by TSR was 1978's Steading of Hill Giant Chief, written by Gygax. A linked series of adventures is commonly referred to as a campaign. The locations where these adventures occur, such as a city, country, planet, or entire fictional universe, are referred to as campaign settings, or worlds. D&D settings are based in various fantasy genres and feature different levels and types of magic and technology. Popular commercially published campaign settings for Dungeons & Dragons include Greyhawk, Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, Mystara, Spelljammer, Ravenloft, Dark Sun, Planescape, Birthright, and Eberron. In addition to first-party campaigns and modules, 2 campaigns based on popular culture have been created. The first, based on Stranger Things, was released in May 2019. A campaign based on Rick and Morty vs. Dungeons & Dragons comic book series was later released November 2019. Alternatively, DMs may develop their own fictional worlds to use as campaign settings, either planning the adventure ahead or expanding on it as the players progress. Miniature figures. The war games from which Dungeons & Dragons evolved used miniature figures to represent combatants. D&D initially continued the use of miniatures in a fashion similar to its direct predecessors. The original D&D set of 1974 required the use of the chainmail miniatures game for combat resolution. By the publication of 1977 game editions, combat was mostly resolved verbally. Thus, miniatures were no longer required for gameplay, although some players continued to use them as a visual reference. In the 1970s, numerous companies began to sell miniature figures specifically for D&D and similar games. Licensed miniature manufacturers who produced official figures include Grenadier Miniatures from 1980 to 1983, Citadel Miniatures from 84 to 86, Ral Pathra, and STR itself. Most of these miniatures used the 25mm scale. Periodically, Dungeons & Dragons has returned to its wargaming roots with supplementary rules systems for miniature-based wargaming. Supplements such as Battle System 85 and 89 and a new edition of Chainmail from 2001 provided rule systems to handle battles between armies using miniatures. Sources and influences. An immediate predecessor of Dungeons & Dragons was a set of medieval miniature rules written by Jeff Perrin. These were expanded by Gary Gygax, whose editions included fantasy supplement before the game was published as Chainmail. When Dave Wesely entered the army in 1970, his friend and fellow Napoleonics wargamer Dave Arneson began a medieval variation of Wesley's Brownstein games, where players control individuals instead of armies. Arneson used chainmail to resolve combat. As play progressed, Arneson added such innovations as character classes, experience points, level advancement, armor class, and others. Having partnered previously with Gygax on Don't Give Up the Ship, Arneson introduced Gygax to his Blackmoor game, and the two then collaborated on developing the fantasy game, the game that became Dungeons & Dragons, with the final writing and preparation of the text being done by Gygax. The name was chosen by Gygax's 2-year-old daughter, Cindy. Upon being presented with a number of choices of possible names, she exclaimed, "Oh, Daddy, I like Dungeons & Dragons the best." Although less prevalent versions of the story gave credit to his then-wife, Mary Jo. Many Dungeons & Dragons elements appear in hobbies of the mid to late 20th century. For example, character-based role-playing can be seen in improvisational theater. Game world simulations were well developed in wargaming. Fantasy milieu specifically designed for gaming could be seen in Glorantha's board games, among others. Ultimately, however, Dungeons & Dragons represents a unique blending of these elements. The world of D&D was influenced by a world of mythology, history, pulp fiction, and contemporary fantasy novels, as listed by Gygax in the Appendix N of the original Dungeon Master's Guide. The importance of J.R.R. Tolkien's works, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, as an influence on D&D is controversial. The presence in the game of halflings, elves, half-elves, dwarves, orcs, rangers, and the like, as well as convention of diverse adventurers forming a group, draw comparisons to these works. The resemblance was even closer before the threat of copyright action from Tolkien Enterprises, which prompted the name changes of Hobbit to Halfling, Ent to Trant, and Balrog to Balor. For many years, Gygax played down the influence of Tolkien on the development of the game. However, in an interview in 2000, he acknowledged that Tolkien's work had a strong impact, though he also said that the list of other influential authors was long. The D&D magic system, which wizards memorize spells that are used up once cast and must be rememorized the next day, was heavily influenced by Dying Earth stories and novels of Jack Vance. The original alignment system, which grouped all characters and creatures into law, neutrality, and chaos, was derived from the novel Three Hearts and Three Lions by Poul Anderson. A troll described in this work influenced the D&D definition of that monster. Writer and game designer Graham Davis saw the labyrinth of the Greek myth of the Minotaur as an inspiration for the game's use of dungeons as monster layers. Baldur's Gate – Dark Alliance is a 2001 action role-playing video game developed by Snowblind Studios and published by Interplay Entertainment subsidiary Black Isle Studios for the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox consoles, with High Voltage Software handling the GameCube port and Magic Pockets developing the Game Boy Advance version. The game is set in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting of Dungeons & Dragons, and the gameplay is based on the rules of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, which was released in 2000. It is the first video game to implement the real-time application of the new rules. It is also the first game in Baldur's Gate series to be released on consoles as opposed to just PC and Mac. Dark Alliance was received well on all four platforms, with the PlayStation 2 version going on to win the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Award for Console Role-Playing Game of the Year 2002. A sequel, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, was released in 2004 for non-Nintendo consoles. A third game was planned, but was canceled early in development due to legal problems, and the closure of Black Isle Studios after Interplay went bankrupt. In 2021, a 4K port of Dark Alliance was released for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And in 2023, ports for iOS and Android mobile devices were released. Gameplay. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance is a real-time hack-and-slash action role-playing game presented in a 3D perspective with a rotatable isometric 3/4 top-down view. At the beginning of the game, character stats are preset, with the player able to choose from 3 race class combinations: a dwarven fighter, a human archer, or an elven sorceress. The player can customize their character's stats through gaining experience points from defeating enemies. Every time the character increases in level, points are awarded corresponding to their previous level, i.e., if a character increases to level 12, the player will gain 11 experience points to spend on the character's spells and feats. For every 4 levels which the character increases, the player is given 1 ability point to spend on one of the 6 core attributes: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. Each of the 3 characters have their own unique fighting style and their own specific set of spells and feats. Gameplay strategy is thus different for each character. As a dwarven fighter, the spells and feats tend to focus on increasing the brute strength and ability to resist damage, as well as granting powerful abilities to aid in melee combat, such as the ability to swing weapons in a circle or slam it to the ground to damage groups of nearby enemies. As the human archer relies on ranged attacks, spells and feats tend to focus on increasing power of the bow and granting the ability to fire special types of arrows, such as exploding arrows, ice arrows, or multiple arrows. As the elven sorceress, her spells and feats tend to focus on increasing the power of magic and granting numerous new spells, such as the ability to shoot ice or fire from her fingers, shoot a ball of lightning, or call down meteors on her enemies. Gameplay is linear, and each main quest must be completed in sequence before the story can proceed, although there are some optional side quests which do not have to be completed immediately, but all side quests must be completed within the act in which they are assigned. There are relatively few NPCs in the game, with whom only those who are part of a quest or side quest may be interacted. Weapons, armor, and items are only available for purchase from one location at a time, and become increasingly expensive and more powerful as the game progresses. The HUD features the option to use either a transparent map that covers most of the screen, or a minimap, with the player also given the option to turn the map off completely. The game also features cooperative gameplay with another player. Both players share the same screen and are thus limited to how far they can move away from one another. In co-op mode, the player who makes the kill gets 60% of the experience, and the other player gets 40%. Whichever player collects any gold drops gets 100% of the value, with the other getting nothing. The game contains 4 difficulty levels: easy, normal, hard, and extreme. Extreme can only be unlocked after the player has beaten the gauntlet, a special mini-dungeon unlocked once the player completes the game on any difficulty level. The gauntlet can be played with Drizzt Do'Urden. Extreme mode takes the form of a new game plus, and can only be played by importing a saved character from another game. Once the player has completed extreme mode, Drizzt Do'Urden becomes available to use in the main game. The GBA version. The Game Boy Advance version of Dark Alliance features some noticeable gameplay differences from the console versions, while still generally following the same storyline as the other versions. Character creation is far more limited, with a human male playable, though the player still has choice of playing as either a fighter, wizard, or archer. After completing the game, a 4th class, Elven Fighter, becomes available on further playthroughs. There is no option to retain a character upon completing the game and play through the story again, and must begin again with a new character. The game is also limited in more technical areas. There is no multiplayer or cooperative mode, forcing the player to complete the game alone. You cannot jump. There are no recall potions, which are utilized in some of the home console ports to teleport back to town to sell wares before going back into the dungeon. On the other hand, the game has been expanded in ways not present in the console versions. The town of Baldur's Gate is far more interactive, with the ability to talk to NPCs, enter houses, and use weapons to open breakable objects, such as barrels. There are additional side quests, and the game can be saved at any point, giving the player flexibility to pause their game at any moment. Plot. Setting. The game takes place in Sword Coast and the Western Heartlands, areas in Faerun, continent of the Forgotten Realm. Each act of the game takes place in a different region. Act 1 takes place in the city of Baldur's Gate itself, Act 2 in the Sunset Mountains, and Act 3 in the Marsh of Chilimber. Story. The game begins with Vaughn, Adriana, and Cromlech arriving in Baldur's Gate, whereupon they are attacked by a group of thieves led by Karm. The City Watch save the trio and take them to the Elf Song Tavern to recover. There, the bartender, Aleth Alandara, tasks them to clear the tavern's cellar of rats. In the cellar, they discover the thieves are using the tavern's sewer entrance to infiltrate the city. When Elf Song Tavern employee Elthon follows them into the sewers and disappears, they rescue him from the thieves, and he directs them to the nearby crypts, where one of the thieves was headed. There they encounter Fayed, a priest of Ilmater, who requests their help in stopping the Orb of the Undead. which has filled the crypts with zombies and skeletons. They destroy the orb and discover the thieves, collectively known as Xantham's Guild, placed it there. Ethan introduced them to Jarek, a member of the Harpers, a group dedicated to protecting the realms from evil. Impressed by the trio, he invites them to join the Harpers and destroy Xantham's Guild. They agree, and Jarek shows them the guild's entrance into the sewers. After navigating a gauntlet of traps, they face and kill Karn. They then find the guild master, a beholder, Xantham. They fight and kill him, and Jarek asks them to enter a portal which Xantham was guarding. The portal transports them to the Sunset Mountains, whereupon they head to a dwarf mining village, which is oppressed by drow elves. They light a signal fire atop a nearby mountain, calling for aid from neighboring dwarven clans, and enter the mines to root out the drow. After killing drow priestess, they rescue a dwarven harper, who tells them of another portal in the mountains. He also tells them that troops and monsters are planning to use the portals to move from the mountains into Baldur's Gate, attacking the city from within. The adventurers head to the portal, which is guarded by the ice dragon Syraxis. They slay him and pass through the portal into the marsh of Shalimber. There they meet Slevis, one of the native lizard folk. He tells them of the nearby Onyx Tower and its inhabitant, Eldrith the Betrayer, who has sworn vengeance against Baldur's Gate. He reveals that his kin, led by the lizard Seths, are serving Eldrith. The trio fight through hordes of lizard folk, kill Seths, and cripple the lizard army. Slevis leads them to the Onyx Tower, which they enter by taking a detour through the elemental plane of water. Inside the tower, they witness Eldrith's preparations of war and fight their way upwards through the legions of Eldrith's soldiers. At the penultimate level of the tower, they meet the ghost of Celadon, first captain of the Company of the Westering Sun. He explains that Eldrith once served Baldur's Gate as its greatest general, fighting a crusade against the Black Horde. After defending the city, she defied orders and led her army in pursuit of the retreating horde. Trapping them in a ravine, they proved stronger than she had anticipated, and she asked the city for reinforcements, which never came. Eldrith survived, but her army was defeated, and furious, she rallied her remaining soldiers to attack Baldur's Gate, but was again defeated. The city's soldiers pursued her and her men to the marshes of Chalimber and killed them all. But Eldrith's rage was such that she returned to life, creating the Onyx Tower, which gave her access to the portals. Seeking revenge, she orchestrated the attacks against Baldur's Gate and created a dark alliance between Xantham's Guild, the Drow, and Seth's tribes. Celadon explains that if the trio defeated Eldrith, the tower would be destroyed, and the ghosts within would be freed. However, as they cannot leave the tower, it will likely lead to their own deaths. They find Eldrith on the roof of the tower guarding another portal. She reiterates her plans for the destruction of Baldur's Gate. They fight and defeat her, and as she dies, she repents for her actions. With the tower crumbling, the heroes enter the portal not knowing where it leads. It is revealed that Slevis manipulated the heroes to defeat Eldrith for his unidentified master. He tells his master that the heroes have died within the tower and Eldrith is no longer an obstacle. As such, they can now proceed with their plans. Meanwhile, the trio emerge in an unknown forest and are surrounded by dark creatures. Development. Dark Alliance was first revealed in November 2000, when Interplay confirmed to IGN that a PlayStation 2 game based on Baldur's Gate 2 had entered production, following the cancellation of the Sega Dreamcast port of the original Baldur's Gate. Little was known at that time other than the fact that Interplay would publish, and BioWare, developers of the original Baldur's Gate, would not develop the game. Instead, the game was to be developed by Snowblind Studios. The game was officially confirmed in February 2001. Ryan Gaithman, director of Snowblind, added, "We are developing the game from the ground up to take full advantage of the sophisticated PlayStation 2 technology. Our goal is to push the hardware to its limits, thus creating stunning environmental effects and highly detailed characters never before seen on the console." Interplay said that if the game was successful, a sequel would enter development immediately. The game utilized a new game engine, the Dark Alliance engine, which was built specifically for Dark Alliance, and would go on to become the foundation for other games on the PlayStation 2, such as Fallout, Brotherhood of Steel, and The Bard's Tale. Graphically, the Dark Alliance engine is a major improvement over the engine used by the original PC Baldur's Gate games, the Infinity engine. Infinity was only able to render 2D sprite characters and static environments. The Dark Alliance engine, on the other hand, made use of the PlayStation 2's advanced GPU, allowing for such improvements as dynamic lighting, real-time shadowing, and 3D models of characters and environments. In September, Interplay originally entered negotiations with Vivendi Universal Games for an exclusive North American distribution deal, with Dark Alliance being one of the first two titles. The game was finalized and was originally scheduled with a release date of November 12th. The game was shipped by Black Isle Studios on December 3rd. Reception. When the game was first shown at E3 in May of 2001, it gained critical acclaim, with IGN writing, "It almost instantly became one of the most wanted games for PlayStation 2 owners across the country. The game's graphics are as good as anything else on the system. It's as simple as that. The lighting, shadows, textures, models, water effects, and reflections are all amazing to look at, and are a testament to the power of the PlayStation 2 and the skills of the developers over at Snowblind Studios." Commenting on E3 presentation, IGN wrote that none of the problems that are commonly associated with PlayStation 2 games, such as low-res textures, flickering, or aliasing problems, can be found here. It's hard to think of a game that pulls off the much-fabled anti-aliasing as well as this game does. Dark Alliance uses a technique similar to what a large number of Dreamcast games did to pull off their clean look. They simply render the scene at a much higher resolution, anti-alias it, then drop it down to a more acceptable resolution for TVs. The result is a beautifully anti-aliased game. IGN gave a full preview in November, again praising the graphics, and wrote, "This game is running on a rock-solid 3D engine with completely rotatable dungeons, brilliant animation for nearly every interactive element, of which there are many, and first-rate lighting effects of all different kinds. In the beginning, simple refined touches are impressive, amid the generally sharp atmosphere of the game. While there is no visible aliasing, the graphics aren't heavily filtered either. Even when all you have to fight are rats, and all you have to fight with is a dagger, you can admire how barrels come apart when you smash them, in realistically shaded pieces, and a puff of dust, or all the different limbs you can bloodily excise from your foes." I was daunted by this set at first, but once I got into the groove, I found this to be a really enjoyable build. There are different techniques. The spiral staircase was very satisfying to assemble, all the unique monsters, and how dexterous the dragon becomes, even with the claws being posable. This set is more of an approximate build time, however, because making the fingers on the dragon's wing, my camera had overheated and I lost about a minute of footage. This was my first time playing Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance for the GBA, and I kept forgetting the golden rule for old school RPGs. Save and save often. I got really into the game after playing for about 3 hours, and it really started to scratch my OCD itch. Total build time? 8 hours, 38 minutes, 22 seconds. Approximately. Which means you could watch 23 and a half episodes of the 1983 American cartoon Dungeons and Dragons. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.